Sanusha Naidoo right here next to me, political analyst. We normally connect telephonically, and now she's right here in Parliament at the CTICC. It's good to have you so close, Sanusha.
Oh, Clarence, it's great. I feel like I'm in the company of a really big celebrity.
Where?
You.
Oh, there she is. That's CD. There we go. Right, you are. I swear that I could be faithful to the Republic of South Africa. I will obey, respect, and uphold the Constitution and all other laws of the Republic. I swear to perform my functions as a member of the Assembly to the best of my ability. So help me God. That's the oath or the affirmation that is being taken at this moment in time. Yeah. Can we use it against them?
Well, I think it's part of when you decide that you're going to become a member of Parliament. It's part of the process that you take this oath and affirmation in the context of the Constitution and in the context of the fact that you'll uphold those dynamics of what the oversight dynamics are of Parliament. And so it's also about the fact that you'll act within the context of that and within the boundaries of that oath. So legally, I'm not a legal expert, so I can't tell you, if you basically infringe that oath, what does it mean? But I think it also aligns very, very importantly to the fact that you have a conduct of rules. So if you look at what the conduct of rules are, and you look at what happened with the EFF at the last State of the Nation, where they kind of stormed the podium at the City Hall where President Ramaphosa was delivering the Sona, that had implications and ramifications for them, in a sense that Parliament took a decision that this was not within the conduct of the rules, and perhaps by extension, and again, I'm just talking about from the way I interpret it. It doesn't have to be the interpretation of what others may see, but I think it also informs, what the rules are in terms of your conduct. So you're upholding an important integrity of an institution that plays a critical role in terms of the oversight and the separation of powers.
Sure. So I think the Judge President has taken proactive steps to ensure that proceedings today are symbolic like they should be and not shambolic. It's kind of playing out okay.
Yeah, so far so good. We're seeing the groups of 10 stepping up and taking their oath or affirmation, depending what there is. And of course, so far it's good. I mean, we'll have to wait to see when the MK, I think there's 5 members that have confirmed their attendance today. We'll have to see when the MK essentially comes on and when they take their affirmation or oath, depending. But of course, this doesn't mean that the members that are not here from the MK party actually have now no opportunity to take the oath or affirmation. I think, as the Secretary of Parliament, Kulile George, said earlier today, that there will be more of the swearing in of MPs next week. Yeah.
So do you expect things to kind of pan out largely unimpacted by, let's say, disconnected political parties at this moment in time? Are we going to see the nomination and the election of the Speaker and the President later today as well?
Well, that's what the schedule says, and that's what the Chief Justice has indicated in terms of what the program is for today. So all of the MPs that will be sworn in, and then I think after that will be the nomination of the candidate for Speaker, and then of course, depending on how many nominations you get, then of course you'll have to decide if you go into a secret ballot, and then of course it goes down the list. If you have 3 candidates, the one that gets the least then it falls away, and then you get to 2, and then obviously the one with the most votes will come in. But I think what is really important for us to watch out for here is who gets nominated for that position of Speaker, and that will tell you in a sense, because this morning we saw a lot of frenzy activity running around in terms of 11th hour negotiations and trying to I wouldn't say firm up, but try to get to some kind of consensus on the GNU governing arrangement. And more importantly, I think will we see that it will give us an indication of what the kind of broad trajectory of this GNU will look like. It's not we're not out of the woods yet. I think we're still still very much in a complexity state. I mean, in political risk analysis, we call it the VUCA model: vulnerability, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So we're really in that state of affairs right now. But I think at the end of the day, it's also important for us to see who will nominate a second candidate, if there is that that will happen, to contest the election of the president.
We did see Helen Ziller. We were standing out there, and then she came in this morning just after 9 a.m. and it looked as if it was a rather intense telephone call. I wouldn't be surprised if there was that last minute negotiations that you are talking about going down. She was bellowing into her phone. At this junction now, the stage that we are in, is it like principal talking to principal?
It could be bellowing to principal. It could be bellowing to, we don't have enough luxury of time. I think the best thing about being here, and especially the fact that, if it was at the parliamentary precinct, where the parliament is still under reconstruction because of the fire, you wouldn't see this kind of up and close body language. You wouldn't have that kind of luxury to be able to watch what's happening. And I think that is more important. That gives you more of a sense of how this is going out and how delicate it is and how probably maddening it is for people right now, because they can't come to any conclusive kind of arrangement. But it gives you that sense. And so the bellowing could have been to anyone. But I also saw her, she was rushing out and walking really fast past all the media.
Okay, well, but they did corner her. And they did have their pound of flesh, the media, that is. She did look really, really busy. And a lot of people have left it too late, and I'm talking here about MK, maybe EFF as well. I think you've spoken about the horse that has bolted, and now it is necessary for them to catch up. But can they catch up?
Well, I think the MK really has to make some critical decisions for itself. Firstly, the 7 members that we have been told by the Secretary of Parliament that have now not come into Parliament or have been the lists not on the list, so to on the national regional compensatory list. So I think that's the one thing they have to decide on. I'm very curious to see who are the 5 members that have agreed to come, and if one of them is former President Jacob Zuma's daughter. It will be very wonderful to watch that. I think it will be an indication of what we are going to see. The other thing we have to think about as well is there's going to have to be the province has to also start sorting out their provincial structure and their governing arrangement in KZN, because tomorrow you have the swearing in of the NCOP members, the 6 members from the provinces and the 4 special delegates from the provinces, which makes up 90 members of the NCOP. And that will give us an indication of where perhaps certain members in MK will be sitting. Will they be sitting in national parliament, or will they be sitting in the provincial parliament? And what kind of negotiations are happening there? So I think there's 2 watching briefs here. One is in Parliament now, which is in this in the ICC, which is acting as a de facto parliamentary precinct, and of course the other one is KZN. Yeah.
You did say ICC, not ICU. Just talk about
it. Feels like the ICU at times.
Let's talk about the ICU. And I think there's still going to be a lot of politics happening in KwaZulu-Natal. What kind of politics are you expecting down on that side? MK has won 45% of the vote, and they're going to say, we're the biggest party here. We deserve. The people have spoken. And it could go anyway still.
Well, it's still very much an unpredictable province. I mean, it's a province that I grew up in, and it's a province that has remained at the center of a lot of our post-transition politics. In the early period, you saw that kind of tension between ANC and IFP. We saw the political violence that happened and the kinds of impact that had. Then, of course, you kind of go to the idea that what happened in July 2021. So I think, this province ends up in coming back, almost like it comes back constantly to underline the kind of challenges, but also the questions about what will be the impact of this province on the national and importantly on the economic, because it's a very important province from an economic perspective. It's got a major port. It's a transport logistics hub. It also feeds into the supply chain management of landlocked provinces. It carries goods over particular transport corridors, and it even actually, it's not just for South Africa, it's also for the region. So this is something we need to watch for. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think for me, it becomes even more difficult to speculate because everything feels so uncertain right now.
Yeah, and I think the big moment, just to wrap up, with Sanusha Naidoo, political analyst, and we have her here. Every political analyst has gathered at the Cape Town International Convention Centre. It makes sense. It's about politics today.
You can't ignore it. Everything is political.
Nook and cranny of this place. So we are going to have a Sona. We're going to have a State of the Nation, which is separate to this first sitting of the 7th House. We are going to have a government of national unity. That's going to be interesting. So for once, the ANC does not have the means to determine that kind of direction, that policy direction into the future. There's going to be some give and take, and I would imagine that's going to come through into Sona, but it's also going to come through into some of the budget speeches that maybe is going to be occupied by other parties.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we have to think about is what are some of the dynamics between the executive and Parliament. So we do know that Parliament, for me, this election was really where Parliament became a critical space, a critical institution, because once you got the election results out, you had to look at the seats and the number of seats political parties get in Parliament. Yeah. So the committees are going to be critical. So if indeed we see some kind of compromise or some kind of consensus that a particular political party in this, now what we're seeing as the GNU of ANC, DA, IFP, and I think there's also the PA in there, I'm not sure, and NFP in KwaZulu-Natal. Of course, it's still not a done deal because, like you said, there was a lot of huffing and puffing and a lot of anxiety as people, as the majors in these negotiations were still kind of trying to figure out whether they got some kind of agreement. I think if you have a political party that gets a portfolio, would it be that that same political party can get the chair of a portfolio committee in Parliament? Should you then spread it around? Who will be there? Because I think this is where the Parliament is becoming much more critical, much more about the oversight. And so it won't be business as usual. It will be much more debate, much more oversight, hopefully, and much more understanding, for example, on the money bills, on the budget bills, on the division of that, because it's not going to be that if you bring a budget to Parliament, you're just going to basically endorse it and let it go through. It's going to be debates on legislation, and I think this is what would have been interesting if the President did not sign the NHI before, and then it came back to this Parliament, and we do have legislation that will be coming back. It means that it would have been a much more difficult process. So previously, where you had committees kind of going with a slight majority because the ANC members constituted a major component of committees and they were able to do their reports, send it to the NA, and the NA adopted it. I think this time around it's going to be much more difficult.
Let's just go there quickly because I think Aidan and a lot of us haven't quite connected the dots. So Aidan is, again, simply, please explain the difference between GNU and coalition government. Do the individual political parties have more independence within a GNU or within a coalition?
Well, I think firstly, normally and theoretically, GNUs emerge out of what many argue is a crisis. So obviously the question is, we do have a bit of a important dynamic in terms of where our political spectrum is and where our body politic of the state is. And of course, the fact of this is one aspect of that dilemma is that you weren't able to, none of the political parties were able to form a government on their own. So because none of them were able to win a majority, the ANC still winning. What somebody told me very interestingly is they won a simple majority, but they're not the majoritarian party. So I think that's very important. So this is now, what option do they have? Do they go into a coalition? I think a coalition and a GNU. Well, a coalition is a GNU is almost like, a coalition on steroids in a way, if you want to call it that. Because in a coalition you can find more formality and more kind of locking it down. But of course you run the risks in both. It's the fact that all parties will try to assert their independence. The point here is that in a GNU, you have to make sure that, like in a coalition, the collapsing of that GNU has to be protected.
Yeah.
And how long does that GNU lie if one of the parties decide that it's not working for them, like we saw after 94? But remember, 94, the GNU was only an interim GNU because we had only an interim constitution. Here we have a permanent constitution, and the question is, are these parties are willing to go forward even beyond whatever this governing arrangement is to make sure it's strengthened, or are they going to become caught up in their own dilemmas of the GNU?
We're gonna wrap it there, Sanusha Naidoo, but the political parties are playing it pretty close to their chest, and I can't understand for the life of me why. Are they scared it's going to cause eruptions on a day like today with the processes that must evolve as they are at this moment in time? Why is it that we're not close to understanding the nature of the relationships that are consolidating?
Well, I'm baffled by this as well, because I mean, if you had a constituency that voted for you just over 6 million, you had a constituency that voted for you for over 3 million. I mean, take them in your confidence, right? But it's almost as if we've always played this kind of politics that we can't let anything out because
we know
we're so
what's
scared.
good for you.
Yeah. And not only that, there's always this kind of paranoia that has seeped into our politics.
Okay, well, there's a whole lot to discuss, and that's going to be a familiar voice come the rest of 2024. Sanusha Naidoo, our guest today, political analyst.